at today is ethnicity and how it's represented within life on Mars. Now, the first time we have a look at this properly is actually in Series 2, Episode 2, where we have a police officer come to the force from another department and try and fit in. And by trying to fit in, he almost plays up to lots of the negative stereotypes that the officers are using towards him, something Sam finds very difficult, knowing him when he was in present day as a very successful officer and somebody he looked up to. So he finds it very difficult where he sees him playing around, saying things like, "Don't worry, don't rub off," when he shakes Sam's hand, making jokes about Enoch Powell, who was a very racist politician of the time. But he then explains to Sam, "You don't understand what it is to be me. I have to fit in any way that allows me to be part of this force, and just to be here is enough," which is something that Sam finds quite difficult. Perhaps we could say this is similar to what we saw with Annie and how she lets the banter go by. So in a similar way, looking at gender representation and ethnic representation. We're going to have a little look at some clips featuring the Glenn Fletcher in a second. They did also look at racism in an episode that looked at the Ugandan immigrants, and in that episode, Ray was used to be the more racist character, as it says, if you look at the slide, that the creators felt that they just couldn't push Gene that far. We need to be able to like Gene and understand him, and from a point of current contemporary sensibilities, that would have been very difficult if he'd been the one who was portraying those very overt racist ideals. So within the one looking at the Ugandan Asians, you've got them referred to as Pakis, as darkies, as coloured, and the idea that they all look alike. All these horrendous racist terms that were perhaps much more commonplace in the 70s. And so when we're looking at these ideas, we're thinking, how does that fit with our theory? So we've got Hall, who gives us the idea that all non-white groups are represented as other. And so you've got the way that the Ugandan Asian community are seen by the other officers, by the people around them as other. Sam, as our contemporary eyes in the story, he doesn't see them as that. So again, we're kind of given the theory and made to show that it's positioned in that way in the 1970s throwback, but the idea that that's not so valid today. We can then also look obviously at Gilroy and the idea that it's the legacy of colonialism and imperialism which has actually informed those sort of attitudes to race and ethnicity that we have today, and they're still there. Looking again at that episode, we have looking at the National Front, and that kind of the feeling among those angry users that day that was still based by that idea of imperialism and that idea of difference. Again, we use Sam to show that whereas that might have been something that was more commonplace in the 70s, that is not something that is, or at least should be, part of British society today. So what we have here is the introduction of the fact that Sam knew in contemporary times the police officer that we're about to meet in this episode. So we just watch this little clip here, and I'll help us understand why Sam saw Glenn in such a positive light, and also it's reinforcing that kind of cross-genre idea that we've got here with Sam Tyler potentially as some sort of time-travelling police officer. So view this.
Oi, Death Aid, off it!
Congratulations, Detective Chief Inspector Tyler.
I can't believe it. Me, a DCI.
I never doubted it.
Thank you, sir, for everything.
No need to thank me. You earned it. Be a good role model, Sam.
Sorry for your loss. Who are you? What do you want?
220 at Aintree. Who wants?
Really looked up to this deputy chief constable called Glenn, who is quite a mentor figure to him. And what's going to happen in a minute is going to meet Glenn much earlier on in his career, and the roles are going to be reversed. Just going to move forward a couple of scenes to where DC Glenn Fletcher first comes in to the police department.
Fletcher.
Son Tyler. Welcome.
Don't worry. It doesn't rub off.
DC Chris Skelton.
WDC Cartwright. Annie. I'm sort of new round here too.
First women, now are coloured. It's going to be next dwarves. You here to do the spade work then? Only it can get a bit cold round here. It's not like being back home.
What? Burnage?
You'll have to excuse DS Carling. He's our resident Neanderthal.
No. Good point, no. When that heat wave hit last month, I thought Enoch Powell had me deported. Don't worry. If there's a power cut, I'll roll my eyes and you can follow me out to the exit.
What a nice lad. All right, that's enough. Look, you don't have to play Uncle Tom to fit in around here, okay? You're better than that.
Hold up. D.I. Tyler. You were at Hyde.
Yeah.
You know, I was at Hyde for a bit. Weren't there a bit of bother? I'm sure I remember your name.
Here we go. Come on. Tell us what a bastard he really is.
You must be mixing me up with somebody else.
No, I don't think I am.
Robbery in progress. Wages van in Sparks Lane.
Tyler!
By seeing his hero and his mentor behaving in such a way, feeling that he had to live up to that sort of negative stereotype. He had Annie also showing that sense of real awkwardness with the situation, but you saw Gene's boss thinking, oh, isn't he a nice lad, when he played along with those kind of really offensive stereotypes. In this next clip, what you get to see is Sam alone with Glenn and actually try and get an idea of who he really is and wants to be.
Seriously, boss, take someone else. Nice white face. I'm only on secondment. I don't really want to get involved.
Cut the performance, Glenn. When are you gonna get involved? I mean, how long do you think you've got? Because believe me, everything can change like that. Look, I know this is going to sound weird, but I know who you are underneath.
Oh, you know me, dear. You know how it feels when the monkey sounds start? When the bananas are piled up outside your locker? If I make it through a month without murdering a colleague, they ought to erect a statue of me.
You knew what you were getting into when you signed up.
I didn't sign up to be a bloody standard bearer. I mean, why should I have to fight all the battles?
Because if you don't, who will? Somebody has to be the first. Somebody has to take responsibility.
The only person I'm responsible for is myself.
One day, there's going to be a young recruit who will look to you to show him the way. He'll take his principles, his values, his beliefs directly from you. When that day comes, if you're not good enough, if all you can tell him is to keep your head down and don't cause any trouble, then there's no hope for any of us, is there? How do you want to be remembered, Glenn? You know, when you die, what do you want people to say about the sort of copper you were? About the sort of man you were?
So what you saw there was very much that kind of contrast between the expectations that would be linked in the 70s towards what was possible in the police force if you were non-white, and the possibilities and the reality of contemporary society. So you see those two ideas through what Sam wants for Glenn and what he knows Glenn manages to achieve, and you can see the 70s restrictions playing really heavy on Glenn. So what I'd like you to do now is go back through, have a look back at those clips. If you want to, have a look at the whole of Series 2, Episode 2, and then have a look at the supporting PowerPoint slide and respond to the questions on there. Okay, take care.